Hello and welcome to Freedom Watch, your daily dose of raw liberty, streaming online at foxnews.com. I'm your host, Judge Andrew Napolitano, here defending freedom, defending your natural rights, and defending your right to have a government that stays within the confines of the Constitution. When we talk about libertarian Republicans, candidates true to the Constitution, those that actually offer a real alternative to establishment lawmakers, to the statists, one name comes to mind more than any other, Dr. Rand Paul of Kentucky. This year's Kentucky primary, the Republican primary for the Senate, is expected to be one of the most expensive and competitive primaries in Kentucky's history. There's a lot on the line for both parties in the upcoming elections, and Republican candidate Rand Paul has extra pressure on him as he's the Tea Party candidate, the constitutional candidate, and the one that can possibly bring the Republican Party back to its core beliefs of the primacy of the individual, of limited government, of lower taxes, and of support for the free market. Dr. Paul, it's a pleasure. Welcome back to Freedom Watch.
Thanks for having me on. I think if I had any choice, I'd be the outsider this year. I don't think I really want to be the champion of the establishment.
Well, you are the outsider.
I know. That's what I mean. This is the year of the outsider, and this is our year really to have a chance to elect some good people to Congress.
When we last spoke about this on this show, Dr. Paul, you were telling me about the marvelous support you were receiving from rank-and-file Republican voters, but the continued utter rejection from Republican leaders. Now, since that time, you've advanced in the polls, you've advanced in fundraising, you're still the outsider knocking on the door. Is the Republican leadership listening?
Yeah, in fact, I see a lot more openness as I go around the state. And I've also tried to be someone who can work with others in the party in the sense that, for example, Senator McConnell and I won't always agree on things, but he has been good at opposing McCain-Feingold and pointing out that it was unconstitutional, and we just won a big Supreme Court case. And so I did, call his office and compliment him on this because when we agree with other people, I think it's good to work together. When we disagree, we can. But I've told them I will work with the party when I win the nomination, but I will stay true to my purpose, stay true to the Constitution. There will be disagreements, but when we can agree, I'll try to point out that we do agree.
What are the issues that are resonating right now with Republican voters in Kentucky? What is it that is causing you to rise in the polls and to accumulate such a significant, if I may, war chest?
I think it's the enormous worry about the deficit. Everywhere you go, people are worried. They're worried not just about their kids and grandkids, but they're also worried, and what I tell them is that the threat is even more imminent through the destruction of the currency by paying for this debt with the Fed monetizing the debt. And this is truly a worry out there. When you go to the Tea Parties, and I know you've been to a lot of them too, when you're out there, they don't want more taxes, but their biggest concern is the deficit and the fiscal irresponsibility of Washington. So we actually talk about old-fashioned ideas that all the pundits tell me I'm making a mistake by talking about things that are past their time, but I talk about a balanced budget amendment. I talk about term limits. I think those are two of the key reforms that if we pass those, we could completely transform things in Washington. Now, it doesn't mean they'll obey the Constitution, but at least we wouldn't be getting more and more and deeper into debt if we had to balance our annual budget.
Yeah, I agree with you. The issues in Kentucky, what's resonating most with the voters? I mean, we know, for example, that your, I expect, soon-to-be colleague, Senator Brown in Massachusetts, though not of the same school of thought as you and I and most of our listeners on many constitutional issues, nevertheless made tremendous headway by opposing the march of socialized medicine that the president and Democratic leadership wanted. Aside from your opposition to that and aside from the deficit, is there anything unique to Kentucky that's resonating with Republican voters?
Well, I think they do all believe, the independents as well as the Republicans, that Obama has gone so far to the left that they never dreamed that when he was out there with his sort of pragmatic moderation that he was going to be so far to the left, and I think that scares people. So a lot of it's a counterbalancing that he's gone too far. One issue we have particular to Kentucky is coal, And basically, Obama's EPA will not give permits to mine new coal, and so they're losing jobs dramatically in eastern Kentucky. So they're not only not afraid of cap and trade, but I stand up and I tell them I will introduce legislation to rein in the EPA. I tell them, I go back to your book and I say, look, Carter Coal Company case, 1936. Right. They say it's obscure, but you know what? It's not. That's when the Commerce Clause began its expansion, and I use your interview you did with Clyburn when you asked him where they got the constitutional authority, and he said, well, most of the things we do up here have no constitutional authority, and people respond to that. But I tell them it didn't just start with Obama. It started with the Carter Coal case. It started with Wickard v. Filburn. I mean, it goes way back. But all of those cases set the foundation for 70 years of growth of big government. And really, constitutionally, it all was driven through the Commerce Clause.
Right. You're very kind to mention my book and to mention my interview. And the cases you're talking about are basically ones in which the government enacted legislation that permitted it to regulate the conditions of the manufacture of goods, or in the Carter Coal case, the extraction of coal from the earth because it was moving in interstate commerce, whereas the Constitution only permits the Congress to regulate interstate commerce, which means to keep it regular, to make sure it is moving from state to state, that one state doesn't tax another. But from those cases that you mentioned, there has grown 3 generations of legislation and Supreme Court cases that support that legislation that let the Congress regulate almost everything, from the food we eat to the water we drink to the strength of the water pressure in our showers to the number of legs on desk chairs to the number of lobsters you can take from the sea. Do you think that you can put a stop to that?
And yes, I do. I'm going to make it part of a national movement. But, you know, the interesting thing is there has been a thread of opposition to this for a long time. The only court case that's quoted in the conscience of the conservative is Wickard v. Filburn. So even Goldwater recognized in '64 that it was already a problem, and it is the doorway to big government, and we do have to talk about it. Another thing we talk about, you know, last week we got the endorsement of the Gun Owners of America, which is a big, huge endorsement, and we hope will be part of the endorsements that's going to push us over the top. But one of the things that they are promoting is the Firearms Freedom Act, and this is where you manufacture a gun completely in a state.
Right.
Montana, I know you know about it, but for your listeners, Montana and Tennessee are doing this, and Kentucky has it in our legislature. We haven't passed it, but it's to manufacture something completely within the state, take it to court, and dare the government, the federal government, to come and tell us we can't do it.
The idea is that if the complete gun and all of its parts and all of the ammunition acceptable to it were manufactured in a state and never left the state, that the federal government would have no constitutional authority to regulate it. It's a great idea. I hope it takes on in Kentucky and throughout the nation. Dr. Paul, always a pleasure. Come back and join us again, as you've been, please, from time to time throughout the campaign.
Thank you. You come down to Kentucky. We want you down here.
We'll do our best to get there.
Thanks, Judge.
Thank you.